clouds of cigar smoke and the fine aroma of gin and vermouth, and the endless array of similar women, lengths of breast and thigh, monotonously revealed by clinging gowns, blurred, unrecognizable faces, flute-like and empty voices. And suddenly the dreamer remembered where he was. Without warning, the knowledge came upon him, and without surprise he accepted it. This was Max Everts's place. He knew it well. He paused in his casual scrutiny of the party members and looked about the room for Max. Looked, and knew before looking, that he would not see him. One never saw Max at his own parties. The huge bulk of him obligingly disappeared when the party was launched, and he was not seen thereafter. He was a wise and successful host. When he at last recognized his surroundings, other things swung into the orbit of his recollection. He knew these people, all of them. His mind was allowed to sort and consider the many faces, to remember them and classify them, and as memory encroached, his state of abstraction slipped off him like an oversized cloak, and he felt himself drawn irresistibly down into the whirl and rush of reality, felt himself become a subtle fraction of this throng. Then he saw the young man, and while some part of his mind marveled at the insistent familiarity of his face, another part was sponged and saturated with a heavy knowledge, an inescapable and unsayable awareness of why he had been posited here, why he stood now looking, and what was to happen. This young man sat alone in a large chair in a corner of the room. His hair fell in lank blonde ropes about his head, and occasionally a slender hand lifted absently and made ineffective gestures to flick them into place. He was built slightly, and his stature was made more noticeable by a small stoop that could be seen even when he was seated. He was pale, but his pallidness suggested something more than a mere lack of sunshine. There seemed to be a doughy cushion beneath his skin. One had the impression that if the flesh of his face were touched by an inquisitive finger, it would stay the way it was pushed, as if it lacked the normal resiliency of healthy skin and muscle. Set against this unusual pallidness was a surprising pair of blood-red lips. It was not exactly a sensual red, nor an unhealthy red. On the contrary, it seemed to be the only healthy feature of an otherwise sick countenance. One saw him frequently at Max's parties, but even to an observer unblessed with the supernal acuteness of the dreamer, it was obvious that he did not belong. He seemed involved in an inner restlessness which neither allowed him to be at ease with himself nor with others. He sat forward in his chair, tensely, as if on the verge of leaping to his feet and fleeing in sheer panic. Yet he was seen frequently here, and at other similar gatherings, always a bedeviled alien, a misfit. Always and without fail, each of these functions hung about him like an ill-fitting suit. And the dreamer asked himself, who knew this man? Who knew his real identity? Who knew from whence he came? Who knew his destination? Here is your real stranger, thought the dreamer. Not the man you have never seen, not the man you have never known, not the face you glimpsed briefly on the teeming street, not the dark, once-heard voice, not the foreign face you have read on pages, not these. But here in this man you know too well to know, whom you have seen too often ever to see, here is your real stranger on the streets, this huddled, blonde, tense figure who sits in a chair in the corner of a room, unnoticed and alone. For he was unnoticed and alone, and no one knew him. His name could be spoken by a few, and that was all. The bare essential facts of his life were included in the knowledge of no person here. They were not deemed important enough to consider, much less to investigate. To these people, he was a noise without meaning, an explosion without disruption. The dreamer remembered a particular instance. He remembered him as he stood once nervously in the middle of Max Everts's floor, blinking rapidly at all about him, his restless fingers caressing the stem of a cocktail glass, absorbing all that was going on with the concentrated intensity of a nearsighted owl. That was